Welcome back. This is Larry Morris, and this is session 7 covering file formats and upload to KDP. We have mentioned in passing in several other sessions, you've seen glimpses of the screens that you use to upload, and we've mentioned what kind of files you need to upload, but that's what this session is going to cover. Only that topic and all the details about it. First of all, let's mention the types of files that you can upload to KDP, and we'll talk in a moment about how to get those files. But first, let's mention real quick which ones you need to worry about. Keep in mind, one thing that I've mentioned here is that those that are colored red are what KDP prefers to see for different types of manuscripts, either paperback or hardcover or a Kindle manuscript. It doesn't mean this is what you have to use, but it's a preferred method. One point I'll point out about whether or not you have to do something is KDP does prefer that you use a PDF for a paperback or a hardback manuscript, but you can use a Word document or even an HTML document, but you must use a PDF if your manuscript has full bleed. At any point, any page in your manuscript where you may have art or photographs that go edge to edge, which is full bleed, then you have to use a PDF to upload that manuscript. For Kindle manuscripts, the preferred method, according to KDP, is a KPF file, but I've found in most cases a Word file will suffice quite well, with only a few exceptions, the primary one being that wrinkle of photographs that we mentioned, I think in the photograph session, the last one, about if you have in your manuscript, if you have a situation where you have text flowing around a photograph, the only way to get that is by using or by creating a KPF file that you can upload. If you don't have that, a doc file, a Word document will work very well for a Kindle manuscript, and it saves you the extra hassle of creating that KPF. The only other thing I'll point out on this slide before we move on, and I've mentioned this before, but I can't bring it up enough, is that the paperback and the hardcover can share a manuscript. Now keep in mind, the only thing really that I have ever seen that will prevent you from sharing a manuscript between a paperback and a hardcover, and I've seen this in too many cases, is a lot of publishers will put the ISBN number in the manuscript on the copyright page, which is completely irrelevant because the ISBN is already on the back cover, on the bottom right-hand corner of the back cover. You don't need it inside the manuscript. But since a paperback and a hardcover require separate manuscripts, if you do that, obviously you can't share that manuscript. So keep that in mind. Now let's talk a little bit about where those files come from. Obviously, most people today, and what I recommend authors do, is create their manuscript in Word. And that obviously means it's going to be a doc or a docx file, depending on what level of Word you have. So if you have created that manuscript with Word, then you have what you need to upload directly for a paperback or a hardcover. If you want to use a PDF or an HTML, and again, I always recommend for a paperback or a hardcover to use a PDF because that seems to work better for the processes for a printed book. But if you want to use a PDF or an HTML file, just use Word's Save As capability to save it as a PDF or save it as an HTML. And again, what I mentioned before is that on the first slide, if your manuscript has full bleed, you must use a PDF. For those of you who are going to create a PDF, or excuse me, a Kindle, an ebook, assume you're again using Word to create your manuscript. And as with a paperback or a hardcover, you can use that directly to upload. And if you need to create a KPF file, and again, the only reason, as I mentioned before, that I've ever run into where you absolutely need to create a KPF file is if you have photographs where text flows around it. The only way I'm aware of to preserve that into a Kindle is to use Kindle Create to create a KPF file. But that's the free piece of software you'll need from Amazon to do that. And I talked about that process in the last session about how that works, basically how to do that. So refer to that if you have that situation. And if you need an EPUB file, you can use the leading software on that, which is a piece of open source, Calibra. The only reason that I can think of that you would need an EPUB, and there are certain oddities with an EPUB that you have to be aware of, so do some research, but the only reason that I can think of you would need an EPUB is you're creating an ebook that is going to be distributed outside of the Amazon environment. Most people prefer EPUBs for that. Now, we've mentioned this before a couple of times, but we'll bring it up again because it's relevant now in this situation where we're talking about creating the files. How do I handle the fact that I have a Word document for my paperback or hardcover, and I also need one for Kindle? These can be the same file. Keep that in mind. And what I would suggest, if you're doing this yourself, is to create the Word document for the paperback and then initially upload it to Kindle as a Word document and go through the review process on KDP and see what it looks like. It may be fine to use. Amazon's gotten to the point now where they ignore things that don't matter to an ebook, like gutters and margins, headers and footers, and things like that. The only two issues you may have to deal with is some of the fonts that you have selected for your Word manuscript for paperback or hardcover may not survive the Kindle translation process, and Amazon may substitute a different font. So keep track of that. And the second thing is, again, if you have photographs, some things don't translate very well, and I covered how to handle most of those in the prior session on photographs. For cover files, those are a little bit different. You must start the cover design process with an Amazon template. There's one template you can use for paperbacks and another one for hardcovers, because you'll notice those are different quite different, particularly around the edges of the book. You can see how that changes, and that's all because the covers for a hardback actually reach beyond the page size, and the spine on a hardcover has a little wrinkle in it that the paperback doesn't have. So the templates to build that cover have to be different. So you're going to have a separate cover file for a paperback and a hardcover, even if they share the same manuscript. And once you bring those into whatever software you're using, and again, it could be any photo processing software like Photoshop or several of their lookalikes, or a graphic design editor like the one I use Inkscape, then you must save that project as a PDF file. That's what you have to upload for a Kindle file for a paperback or a hardcover. A Kindle, for a paperback or a hardcover, you have to upload a PDF. A Kindle is completely different. All you need for a Kindle is the front cover, typically of what you used for the paperback or the hardcover. You turn that into a JPEG and you upload that, and that can be your cover. The other option you have is to use a cover create process that is available, and I'll mention where that is when I go through the upload dialogues here in a moment. But what most designers do, same thing I do, to build that JPEG front cover for Kindle, is take the paperback PDF that you've created, save it as a full JPEG, and then get into photo processing software and crop out just the front cover, and then you have one. Now, the first thing you have to do, obviously, and we've mentioned this several times, is create a KDP account. And you do that by going to this website and clicking on Join KDP. That will take you to that login page or create account page. And my suggestion, as I've mentioned down here, is if you have a normal Amazon shopping account, use the same email address and password for your KDP account that you use for your online shopping account. The reason I bring that up is that it makes it a lot easier when you buy author copies of your books, because you already have a purchasing account set up that has your credit card on file, and the two will communicate with each other. When you're in the KDP site and you want to order author copies, you request that and say how many, and then it transfers those author copies over to your normal Amazon purchase account, and that's how you pay for them and how they get shipped. So it works well together if you use the same credentials. Now, once you have created an account, to upload the documents, from that point on, once you've created the account, if you go to that same address that we mentioned before, and what I would do is bookmark this and make it a different bookmark than your normal Amazon account. So even though they use the same credentials, and typically if you use the same PC all the time, they will stay logged in most of the time. You can just go back and forth between the two by going to a different website. The very first time you decide to publish a book, the first step you have to take is there's a big yellow button on that login page after you get to that you should use to create a brand new book for publication. Once you click on that, you'll be presented with a screen that gives you 3 different choices. How do you want to start? You want to start with a Kindle ebook, with a paperback, and with a hardcover. And we'll loosely discuss each one, but they all have to be processed individually. They all have to be published individually. And interestingly enough, and thank goodness, they all use exactly the same process. So let's look at that process, and we're going to say you pick paperback. And if you select paperback or Kindle or hardcover, obviously, you will then see a screen that looks like this. There are 3 tabs on this screen, and you will move from one to the other to describe everything that Amazon needs to publish that book. And those 3 categories are details, content, and paperback rights and pricing, whatever format you picked. And notice it'll say paperback here and here and here. If you selected you wanted to start with Kindle, it would obviously say Kindle details, Kindle content, Kindle rights and pricing, so forth. Now, we're not going to cover each of these screens individually, but what we're going to do is talk about each entry on each of these screens. And that will suffice usually to get you enough information to figure out how to collect the data that you need. Now, one nice thing is, once you have, and we'll mention this at the end of this, once you have filled out all of the information you need for, in this case, a paperback, and then after you've published that paperback, you decide to publish a Kindle, the metadata, meaning most of the data under the details section, such as book title and subtitle and series and things like that, will carry over to the Kindle version. So they try to do as much as they can to make it easier to publish all 3. Now, the only other thing I'll mention before we move on to the details needed for each of these 3 tabs is, and I've talked about this in every live seminar I've given, and in some cases in some of these recorded sessions, create a book on your publishing account and call it whatever you want. And if you'll notice, I call mine a sandbox, just something to play in. And you can use that book on your timeline to get into KDP and test how you need to set all of this data up without actually publishing the book. And it comes in very handy to experiment with some of the options to see what happens and what happens in the review process, because you can go all the way through the review process for a paperback or a Kindle in this book you're never going to publish, and you can see how certain things will affect what the book looks like. So I encourage everybody to do that, just as to give you as many options as you can to see what things look like before you publish the book. Okay, let's go through the tabs. The first one is whatever format you picked, paperback, Kindle, or hardcover details. Language is an obvious one, I would think. Book title and subtitle. What I will say about that is that whatever you put on this form for book title and subtitle must match exactly what's on the cover that you're creating and what is on the interior of the manuscript. All 3 of those have to be the same. If they aren't, Amazon will raise a red flag and you have to correct it. A series, which will be used by Amazon to tie together books that are the same characters and the same storyline, and you get to decide the order that those books are presented. So if you have a series of books with the same characters, this is a very good mechanism to show readers the order they need to read the books in. And obviously you can do this after you've published the book. You don't have to do it on the first one. When you publish the second one in a series, you can set that series up and add the series number to the previous book you did without any issues. And now that you've seen the fact that this is in blue, like some of the other options are, I'll bring up down here that anything that's in blue on this form and the others, you can change even after publication. So keep that in mind. Edition number. One of the biggest questions I get all the time is, when do I need to create a second edition? How much can I change in the book without creating a second edition? If I want to go in and add a paragraph or two or correct a book I have already published, correct some of the grammar and whatnot in a book. The answer is not as clear as you would think it would be. Amazon suggests that you can change up to 10% of the book's contents without creating a second edition. The copyright process is even more not really clear, more unclear. Is the Copyright Office, the Congressional Copyright Office says you must create a second edition if you have made substantial changes to the manuscript, but they don't define what substantial is, obviously. So keep in mind that Amazon is a little bit more forthcoming and a little bit more lenient. So don't tend to worry too much about, if I publish this book, I can never touch anything in it. That's not true. You can change a lot of the interior, and you can change the cover. We'll mention that again in a little while. You can change the cover anytime. And you can republish the same book. You don't have to call it a second edition or anything. So keep that in mind. Author, obviously, is you. Contributors, this is in case you want to give credit, for example, for a co-author, someone that has helped you write the book, or perhaps a photographer who took the photographs that are in the book. The only place this shows up on Amazon, if you add a contributor, is on Amazon's detail page where people go to buy that book. They will see a list of contributors there. Description should be obvious, and again, this is the only place this description shows up that you enter on this panel is on the detail page where people buy the book. Publishing rights, either you have the copyright to the content of the book or you don't. The only two options in this category on the form is, yes, I have the rights, I have the publishing rights to this book, or no, what is in this book is in the public domain. Primary audience, there are two things to consider in this entry. One is whether or not you have any sexually explicit material in the book, yes or no. And then you can optionally provide an age range that you believe is appropriate for this book. You don't have to do that. It's optional. The primary marketplace, I would assume anybody in the United States that's doing this, the primary marketplace would be Amazon.com. Don't pick Amazon.Japan or Amazon.Germany because you don't live there. Categories. They have a multi-layered drop-down list that you need to pick a category from, and you can pick as many as 3, by the way, separate categories. And these are used for people who search for books by category. But this is based on something called BISAC, which stands for Book Industry Standards and Communications. So this is not something Amazon created on their own. They took this already existing set of categories and modified it slightly, and they used that as the basis for their category pull down. And again, this might be something you would play with in that sandbox book that I was mentioning, just to see what all the categories are and what happens if you pick one or two and what it looks like. The keywords, you'll see on the panel when you look at the actual panel where you enter this, there's a half a dozen or more places where you can enter keywords. But these don't have to be single words. They can be single words or phrases. And these are used to add your book to the list of what's displayed based on readers' searches using keywords. So this is something that's an ongoing process even after you publish the book. The categories, which categories you pick, and the keywords, which keywords you pick. And believe it or not, there are hundreds of books that have been written on the best way to use Amazon's categories and keywords to get the book to pop up in people's search lists. So you may want to do some research on these two topics to see how you can better use those to affect sales. Publication date, that is for something that has previously been published. Amazon wants to know if this book has ever been published before. And usually the first option says this has not been published and we're going to use the release date as the publication date. Release date is very confusing with Amazon. My recommendation is you don't mess with specifying a release date in the future, because Amazon has all kinds of strict guidelines and rules about what that means and how to manage it. I would encourage you to look it up if you think you ever want to play with that. But my recommendation is not to publish it until, or not to say that you're going to release it early, but to say the release date is going to be the same as the publication date. And then you can save as a draft and come back to it later, make changes and move on to the second panel, or you can say save and continue, and Amazon will save this and move on to the next one. And the next one is the content. This is where you actually provide the manuscript and the cover for the book. And you'll notice I have the same thing on this panel that says you can change after publication anything that's in blue. The first thing you need to enter or request one from Amazon is an ISBN. And I've mentioned this before in passing, but again, the only reason most authors will agree with this, the only reason that you need your own ISBN is if you think you may have the need in the future to move this book to another publishing platform other than Amazon. For example, Ingram Spark is one of the other leading independent publishers where you can publish your book. But if you use one of Amazon's ISBNs, you can't move it off the platform. In order to move it to another platform, you would have to create a second edition, which requires another unique ISBN. Now, keep in mind, if you accept Amazon's ISBN, and they will give you one for free, that doesn't mean you lose control of your book. All it means is that you lose the ability to move it from one publishing platform to another one. You still retain the full rights to that book and copyright. So that's not really what's up for discussion here. This is just the ability to move that book. I do both in some of my books. The majority of my books, the sci-fi books that I write, I've had decided I would never move those off of Amazon's platform. So I use Amazon's ISBN for those. Some of the other books I have published, for example, some of my brother's work, who was a newspaper man, I have used my own ISBN that I purchased under my imprint. And I will have a session later in the process to show you where you can get those ISBNs and what to do with them later. Print options. This is where you decide basically what the interior of your book is going to look like and what the cover finish is going to look like. And 4 of these, the color or black and white aspect of the book, the paper you pick, the trim size, and the bleed or no bleed option, all 4 of those have an impact on the template that you have to get to build the cover. And in the very last session before this on covers, I mentioned that and why that's an issue. So if you're curious about that, back up and look at that prior session. And this is also where you pick the cover finish, either matte or glossy, and upload the manuscript and upload the cover. And in both of these cases, when you say you want to upload one of these, Amazon will pop up for you a normal Windows Explorer window. Now, I don't know how they do it on Mac, but on Windows, when you get that Explorer window up, all you have to do is navigate to where your file is, the manuscript or the cover, and click on it, double click in some cases, or click on it and say open, and then Amazon will grab that file and start uploading it. It usually doesn't take long to upload a manuscript or a cover unless it's an extremely large book or you have very slow internet. But as soon as you get control back, when the keyboard is unlocked, and you'll notice this because obviously the cursor will change on your screen and you'll get a little message up that says upload successful. When that happens, the keyboard is unlocked and you can move on to the next step in this process. So once you upload the manuscript and you get control back, immediately upload the cover. And then you can, once you get control back from that, you can move on. We'll talk about the remaining 3 here in just a second, but I want to bring up one point I put in this. I said upload or design a cover. Amazon has the ability to allow you to use their embedded software on their website called a cover creator to go through a step-by-step process and create a cover for that book, specifying all the things we talked about up here: paper color, paper type, trim size, bleed, yes or no, and what kind of design you want for the cover. And again, this may be something that you want to play with in your sandbox book, is to go through that process and see how many options you have in terms of creating a cover. I will let you know right up front that it is not a full featured cover creator. You can't do everything in this software that you can do manually by creating the cover on your own, but it may be something you want to play with. So once you get to that point and you have uploaded or designed your cover and you've uploaded the manuscript, the next question you have to answer is, how much, if at all, did I use AI to build this cover or this manuscript. It's really unclear right now what Amazon is going to do with this information. Right now, they're just in the mode of collecting information. And again, using your Sandbox book, click yes on that. Say, yes, I used some AI, and then you'll see a larger expanded panel pop up that wants to know how you used it and to what extent. So at least play with it so you know what's behind there. And then you're faced with this orange button that says Launch Previewer. Now, what I would suggest, because I've gone through this scores of times with my books and with other people's books that I've worked on, once you have uploaded the manuscript and you've uploaded or designed the cover and you've mentioned how you used AI, immediately click on the Launch Preview button. Now you can see on the screen several pop-up boxes that will show you what Amazon's going through as they process your book. And when they're done processing your book, they will pop up an online review so that you can see what the cover looks like, and then you can step through the pages two at a time. It'll look like a book, a left-facing page and a right-facing page. This is required, it is mandatory for paperbacks or hardcovers. You have to go through at least the online preview before you can publish a book. You don't have to request a printed proof. All they require is that you go through this online review process. And then further down at the bottom of that page, you'll see one last option that will allow you to request a printed proof before you publish. The only thing you wind up paying for when you do this, and by the way, this is the only thing you ever wind up paying for when you publish a book on Amazon, is this will, when you come out of the preview process, you're told how much an author copy will cost at the bottom of the screen. So when you request a proof, they will charge you that amount of money for the author copy, for the proof, and plus shipping. So for, let's say, a sample 6x9 trade size book that's black and white, maybe 250 pages, what most people consider a normal paperback book, that's going to cost you about $6 or $7, depending on what shipping is, to get it to you. So it's not bad. The only difference is it looks exactly like the book will look when it's published, except it has a band around the cover that says not for resale. That's the only change you'll see. But I would encourage the first or second book that you publish, request a printed proof. The more books you publish, the better you will get at creating the manuscript correctly and the cover correctly, and the less you will need an actual printed proof. Let's take a quick look at what that online review process actually looks like. When you click on that link that says Launch Previewer, this is where you will wind up. The code that's running in the background on Amazon will take your cover and your manuscript and combine them together to actually look like a book. The very first thing I will point out is that in this area over here, where they say they have a quality check, if they find anything out of the ordinary, they will list it here. And the two most common errors that wind up here are, number one, your cover is not the correct size for the manuscript you have uploaded. And I mentioned in several of the sessions that when you're building a cover for Amazon, it has to be to those precise specifications when you created the cover. The PDF has to wind up with those exact dimensions, and you're allowed, in most cases, a 10-page leeway either down or up on the manuscript. So as long as you're within that range and the cover dimensions are correct, you shouldn't have any trouble with cover errors. The second issue that will show up here, the second most common issue, is something within the manuscript itself is beyond the bounds of the margins. And typically it's a photograph that has inadvertently been moved too far up, down, left, or right, and it's encroaching over the margin area you've set up. If that's the case, when they list that as a problem that has to be corrected, Amazon will give you the page number of that issue, and you can go through this and actually look at the page and see what the problem is. When you get error, if you don't get any errors like that, and it's difficult to show you, I'll show you in the next slide. Right here, and let's put my marker back up. Right here on this side of the cover, on this edge, and right here on this edge of the display are two big arrows. This one goes in this direction, and this one goes in this direction. And what those allow you to do, you have to hover your mouse there before they pop up. But what those allow you to do is bounce through the manuscript and take a look. And this is what it looks like when you move through that manuscript. You will see and have a chance to verify that the gutter is correct, that all four outside margins are correct, top, bottom, left, and right, that your headers are where you want them, and that the page numbers are where you want them. Now, a lot of this type of stuff, size of the margins, the gutter size, the headers, and the footers, Amazon, if they may be out of place from where you originally wanted them, Amazon's not going to flag that as an error. It doesn't know that you want them somewhere else and they inadvertently got moved. So you really have to bounce through this manuscript at least for a few pages to make sure all of that looks correct. If there's a problem, either with the cover or with some of the margins, gutter, headers, and footers, or you find something that's just completely out of place. For instance, you have, in some cases, you may have paragraph breaks where they don't belong. You have page breaks where they don't belong. You may have pages that are starting on the wrong page. Anything like that that needs to be corrected, what you need to do is click on this, Exit Print Previewer. When you do that, it takes you back to where you were before, which is the Content tab. Now you can get out, you can leave that window up the way it is and open another window that has either your cover or your manuscript. You can make changes, create the types of files you need, like for example, for a manuscript, create a PDF file and a new one for the cover if you've made changes to it. Then get back into this window, which is now on the Content tab, and you can re-upload whichever file you have made changes to. And then when you get control back, press the Launch Previewer button again, and it will bring you back to this page where you can see if those corrections have actually worked. One other thing I will point out before we talk about how to get out of this correctly is you'll notice up in the upper right-hand corner there's a clickable line that says download a PDF proof. What that will provide for you, which comes in very handy if you want to send a book out to early readers or to people you depend on to do proofing and whatnot, and you don't want to send it out in a raw Word document, This will create a specialized PDF where it looks exactly like this. It will look like a 2-page spread, exactly like the interior of your book will look, with even numbered pages on the left, odd numbered pages on the right. So whoever you send this to, an early reader or a proofer, will be able to see what the book looks like on the inside. So now if you accept the book the way it is, and remember, all this is an online proof, you're not publishing it yet, press approve. When you do that, you will get sent back to the content page again with a new edition now. What's been added to the content page down at the bottom where the launch previewer button was, which you use to get to the online preview, is now how much an author copy or a proof will cost you plus shipping. And by the way, the book we're looking at was a 6x9, about 250 pages, and it was black and white. So that's not bad for a printing cost. That plus shipping is all you'll ever pay for your own author copies or for a proof. The very next thing, again, I've mentioned this before, if this is your first trip publishing your own book, maybe the second one, I would request a proof. That process will take you through a couple of other screens and a verification email before they print the proof. And the only difference between an actual copy, an author copy, or the copies that wind up being sold on Amazon and this printed proof is there's a band around the book that says not for resale. Other than that, it looks exactly like the book will look when somebody purchases it. Now that takes care of the content tab, of the middle tab of those 3 tabs. The last one on the right is rights and pricing. And in most cases, you want to pick all territories. I can't imagine why somebody would want to selectively only sell books in certain territories. Your primary marketplace should be Amazon.com. Again, that's the one in the United States. If you do that pull down and look at it, you'll see that they're talking about Amazon Japan, Amazon Germany, Amazon Canada, Amazon Australia. They're all over the place. So you make sure you pick Amazon.com. And then you set the price. In the very first field that you can enter a price for US dollars, enter your price in dollars and cents. Don't put a dollar sign on it, just dollars and a decimal point and then cents. And then either tab out of that field or hit the return key, the enter key. And then Amazon will calculate, based on the current exchange rates, all the prices down below that in every other marketplace. You don't have to worry about those. Amazon will keep track of that and continually update those prices as the exchange rates change. And again, this is something that you can change after publication. If you want to set a special sale price, drop the price, or you're not charging enough, you want to increase the price, get back into, and I'll show you in a moment how to get back into this, but get back into it, change the price, and do publish again. You can republish the same book, simply making those kinds of changes. Now, once you have either published this book or you have done save as a draft and you're getting out of it and then going to decide when you're going to publish it. Either way, the next time you get back into your publishing page on KDP, your bookshelf, you'll see this. You will see a square that represents that book. It's got the title in the upper left-hand corner and a small shot of the cover. And you will have an entry on this square for every possible format that's available for that book. And remember, I mentioned earlier, you have to publish each format independently and separately from the others. So if you've published the paperback first and you have hit the publish key, when you get back into this, instead of saying live, this will say under review, and then it will say publishing, and then when it's done with that, it will say live, as this one does, and you'll get an email that says your book has just gone live on Amazon. Now, the very first thing to notice about this, and primarily this is only for, obviously for paperbacks and for hardcovers, is over here on this side, you'll see this defaults to order author copies. So they're assuming once you published a book, the very first thing you want to do is order some author copies. The way Amazon works, you can order any number of books up to 999 at any time, as often as you want to, and you get the same price per book, no matter how many you order. So it's not a bad deal, and the only thing that fluctuates is the amount of shipping based on the number of books you order. Now keep in mind, when you order large orders, and by large orders I mean probably more than 30 or 40, that order may be split up because they may decide to print it in multiple locations and ship them to you as quick as they can. Most of the time, it's been my experience over the past 11 or 12 years doing this, that it usually takes anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get an order of author copies. So if you're going to do a book sale in person, make sure you order them ahead of time, soon enough, because there's no way to expedite an order. Amazon ships them, prints them and ships them on a first come, first served basis. Now, the other thing I'll point out is if you need to make a change to this book, the very first thing you want to do is hover your mouse over these little 3 dots over here. And what will pop up is this. You'll get this box pop up. And the 3 things to pay attention to, one says edit paperback details. The other one says edit paperback content. And this is edit paperback pricing. Now remember, those 3 are the 3 tabs where you entered all of that data: details, content, and pricing. They also have they've added a couple of new downloads. You can download the latest manuscript and the latest cover, but keep in mind they are going to be in PDF form, and you can't really make substantial edits to a PDF. So I'm not really sure what they've done here, other than allowing you to download these to verify which file you used to originally publish the book. And they've also added a new link that was never there before. I think they added it a couple years ago. You can actually unpublish a book and get it off of Amazon's site completely. I think that covers everything for this topic. So I will see you in the next session.